Cheers. Can you still socialize on a carnivore or animal-based diet? I'm Jackie Elmer. Welcome to my channel, Lower Toxic Life. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of my carnivore-ish updates or anything else that I share on Lower Toxic Living. Today, I want to talk about how to be social when you are at least exploring or maybe full-time into a carnivore or animal-based diet. First thing I want to say is we are conditioned to incorporate food and beverage into everything that we do. Every holiday involves a level of eating and drinking. Every celebration, when we get together with friends, a big part of going out, whatever we do, food and beverage is typically associated with that. So it can be very difficult, especially in the beginning, to disengage yourself from that part of socializing. Now, there's not a law that says in order to be social, in order to be around friends, to entertain, or to do different events, that you have to incorporate food and beverage into it. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to break your own mindset and your own belief system that you can't go to something, you can't be part of something if you're not willing to engage in these social mores of how we've done things in the past. So that's the most important thing. Now, there's two sides that go to the socialization issue. One of them is engaging with family, friends, and those people who were around, answering their questions, feeling awkward and uncomfortable, feeling like we need to justify, or feeling like we need to just do what everybody's always done in order to fit in. So there's the people side of it, and then there's the food and beverage side of it, and they can be totally different. So one of the things that I did in the very beginning is I got very clear on my why. A few years ago, I cut my drinking back dramatically, and I pretty much am an almost non-drinker today in terms of alcoholic beverages. And when I did it, I started off first doing a dry January, as many people do, and then it just kind of went on. And then I developed a very calm, kind, friendly way of saying, but firmly, no, thank you. I no longer consume alcohol, because the reality of it is it just doesn't serve me well anymore. I don't feel good within a couple of hours. Typically, I certainly don't feel good the next day. And it doesn't matter if it's one glass, two glasses, or a bottle of wine. I don't feel optimal anymore. I don't like the way I feel. I don't like the way it's not even necessarily a hangover. It's the lack of motivation. There's just so many things about it that I don't prefer that feeling anymore. I prefer to wake up refreshed, ready to go, with all my joints not feeling inflamed or, feeling like the crooked little lady when I get out of bed or different things. So I had started with that. But that's the biggest thing is you have to get clear on your reasons why, and you have to develop a very firm way of saying, I can still be fun, I can still be social, and it doesn't say anything about you, what my food choices are. And I just explained to people, I am on a very radical elimination diet. I was experiencing some very uncomfortable digestive issues that I am working on through this elimination diet to change that. Do you have to proclaim that it's carnivore, that you're only eating animals, or create this huge distraction and discussion and have all eyes pointed on you? If that's what you want to do, you can do that. But one of the biggest things that I'm choosing to do is I do not want to make myself the center point of conversation when I'm out and about and socializing based on my food and beverage choices. I prefer to be way in the background in terms of that. Now, I'm very comfortable talking about it. I'm very comfortable answering questions. I'm very comfortable doing so in a way that's not pushing back on other people or trying to tell them that my way is right or their way is wrong. Everybody has to test and try for themselves, but that's a big part of it. And it's kind of funny. I tested this out a few months ago. My son was in town and he's kind of doing carnivore with me, even though he doesn't live here. We share photos of foods and different things that we're doing. But the interesting thing is we went to a barbecue at my brother's house. Now, I didn't eat beef from about the age of 20 until just about 5 or 6 months ago. I had already started carnivore and I kept hearing about beef being so healthy. And it was never a health issue. It was more of a social issue and a bad relationship issue from 17 to age 20 that took me out of the eating beef arena. And I knew that it was a story I was telling myself. And I knew that there was a way I could walk myself through it if I just really worked on my mind. I focused on my beliefs. I wrote my beliefs all down, and then I looked at them and I worked them through my process of saying, here's a steak in front of me. What are my thoughts around it? What are my feelings? What are my beliefs from the past? What am I bringing into today's story that tells me that I don't like that? And I overcame my challenge. And now it's one of my favorite things to eat, which is kind of funny. It didn't take me very long, but it was all about repatterning the thoughts that are going on in my brain. So we go to my brother's for a barbecue, and I told my son, I said, I'm just going to be really quiet about this. And I literally filled a plate. I took a little tiny bit of potato salad, which I wouldn't have eaten anyway, because I don't like potato salad. And I took a little tiny spoon of baked beans, which I wouldn't have eaten anyway, because I don't like them. And they're filled with sugar and, seed oils and all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't have eaten those two things anyway. And then I filled my plate up with brisket, and I can't even remember what all it was, but I filled it up with all the meats. And then I think I might have gotten a pickle, because I do still eat pickles. And I just was really calm about it. I didn't say anything other than the typical, everything looks delicious. We all sat down. Everybody was in their own little universe talking and, going on. And my son was kind of watching me and smirking, and nobody said a word. Nobody even noticed. I kind of pushed my beans and my potato salad around on my plate, but I didn't even take a bite of them. And, and then I just said, wow, this was really great. Thank you so much. And that was it. Now, the interesting thing is, my family knows I don't eat beef, but I don't think people pay that much attention. They don't, I couldn't tell you everything that my brother likes or dislikes, except coconut. I know he hates coconut from the time he was a kid, and that hasn't changed. But things like that, people are not paying as much attention to us as we like to think that they are. I'm sorry, I don't mean to burst your bubble, but it's true. So I think the less emphasis that you and I put on it, the better off we're going to be, and the less emphasis that anybody else is going to put on what we're doing, the less attention we're going to draw to ourselves with what it is that we're doing. So that's kind of the social aspect of it. Know your reason why, and have a very short, succinct, but firm way of saying, this is something that I'm doing for myself, whether it's weight loss, a chronic health issue, an elimination diet. I've complained for the last few years about, some of my joint pain and inflammation. My family and my friends all know that I went gluten-free, a lot of that. And so I just build on that. And I'm very nonchalant about it. I don't make a big scene. If we're at a restaurant, I might just order, salmon cooked in butter. And if I have to get a side, I will. I don't make a big deal out of that. I might order a side of avocado. I might order a side of bacon. I just try to be as discreet, yet thorough, and taking care of my own needs as I need to be in order to serve that. And again, so I plan ahead too. If I'm going to a party, I almost always eat before I go to the party. And then, I will very often take my own beverage or my own beverage choices. I like to use coconut water and electrolytes and lime and lemon juice. I can make a beautiful mocktail. I can serve it up in a wine glass or anything else, or I can just have it in my stainless steel water bottle. It doesn't matter. But I always try to, take care of my own self and bring all that stuff. I don't want to put the host or hostess on the spot. I don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable or they have to do anything special to accommodate me. I'm always going to accommodate myself. I have a backpack purse so I can put extra things in it. I'll carry a little bottle of lime juice even, or different things where I can, just take sparkling water and make it fun. So a lot of times if I go to a party, I just don't eat. I don't eat. Or if I go to a party and I am bringing something, bring a charcuterie board. Is a charcuterie board the absolute best that you can eat in terms of meat and animal based? No, it's not always, but you can, do your best to cook different things. You can make meatballs. There's a lot of things that you can do to bring a dish that is meat based, animal based, cheeses. Like I say, a charcuterie board that's just, cold cuts. Are they the best? No, but they're still better than any ultra processed food that you'll ever eat. You can do bacon wrapped shrimp. You can do bacon wrapped pieces of chicken. I mean, there's a lot of different things that you can do to make it carnivore-ish, keto-ish, animal-based so that you're still contributing something. And then the same thing. If I'm going to a dinner, a lot of times, like I say, I will eat ahead and then I just make a little small plate so I can still sit there. I can be appreciative of my host or hostess's, efforts that they've put into it, I don't ever again want to draw attention to myself and what my eating choices are. Not because I'm apologetic about it. I'm not at all. I just have a way to deal with that. And honestly, my family and friends and social environments have never become an issue. And I think that's because I choose to not allow them to become an issue. Now, at the same time, I'm going to say this. I don't preach to people. I'm not trying to convince anybody to do what I'm doing. I'm not going to sit and tell them how much better this is for them. I'm not going to sit and tell them about the toxic superfoods that I see them eating because they all know that I used to consume all this stuff. I just don't really talk about it unless I'm asked questions, and then I wade into the conversation with them very carefully. I'm not here to coach them unless they ask me to be their coach. I'm not here to change their mind on any of that. My goal is if I can inspire people through my own story, my own healing, my own health and wellness and vibrant self, then that's absolutely what I'm going to do. And I'm more than happy to do that. But I don't ever want to alienate anyone, just like I don't like to be alienated for my food choices. The area where I get into the most conversation, of course, is around vegetables, and you need vegetables to be healthy. You need fiber in your diet and all of that. And very often, depending on who the person is, I just ask them, what leads you to think that? Like, why do you think we need fiber? And my whole goal is to get them to say, well, that's what the doctors say, or that's what the standard American diet says, or whatever. And then I begin to question that too. Like, well, have you ever done the research on that? And one of my favorite things is spinach, because spinach is probably the highest oxalate food that's out there. I will likely never touch spinach again by ingesting it. But we've also been told how much iron is in spinach. But did you know that it's a totally different type of iron that we get from animal protein? And also, if you've ever researched the actual human bioavailability of the iron out of spinach, it's almost nothing. The amount of spinach that you would have to consume to get even close to the recommended daily allowance, which is basically, the recommended daily allowance numbers are basically enough to keep you from getting scurvy and, I can't think of what they used to call that when you were like malnutritioned. I can't remember. Anyway, those are so old and antiquated, but the reality of it is so much of that food science and those studies were done on rats. They were done on animals. They were not done on human beings, and they don't equate the same because of the way we digest foods, our stomachs, our digestive systems, all of that. And again, none of this is hidden. So when anybody wants to ask you about the science, I mean, it's kind of fun just even using ChatGPT and asking, is spinach a good source of iron? It'll almost always tell you, yes, it is. But then when you ask it another question like, how much of that iron is bioavailable to the human body? That's where you begin to see things break down. And that's where you can begin to see studies, those settled science studies that are out there from decades gone by. We'll begin to see those crumble and, fall apart. And so I always say with any study, who funded that? I will ask people, they'll tell me, that's what the headlines say. Well, who's they and who funded it? And, was it funded by big food, big pharma? Were those studies done on human beings? Because again, it's almost impossible to really get a pure scientific study of human behaviors around food. Let me ask you a question for those of you who drink. Have you ever lied to your doctor about how many drinks you consume on a weekly basis? Have you ever lied about recreational drug use? Have you ever lied about the amount of sugar that you consume? Have you ever forgotten what you ate last week? So all of these things factor in, and none of this is meant to guilt you or make you think, I certainly have. I didn't always tell the truth about my alcohol consumption. Now, I never had a problem with alcohol, but I always wanted to make it seem a little bit less than what it really was and not be judged potentially by my doctor, or how much. I don't have a sugar issue, thankfully, but so many things like that. And very often we don't remember, and especially as moms, I like to call it overweight by bites, licks, and spoons. When you have little kids, you're taking a bite of their food to make sure that it's cool enough. You're finishing that last bite on their plate, or licks of this as you're cooking. That's what bites, licks, and spoons are. And pretty soon we've put on some excess weight. We've taken extra ultra processed foods or sugar or something into our bodies, and we pay the price for that. So The simple answer is you can socialize just like anyone else when you're eating a specific type of diet, but it's up to you to get your own needs met first. First and foremost, mentally, to be prepared with how you're going to address it, what you're going to say, so that you don't get into a fight, you don't make it unpleasant, you don't get yourself uninvited or canceled off of, the Thanksgiving list or anything like that. You want to stay pleasant, you want to stay fun, you want to stay social. So it starts with your mindset, starts with your own physical needs, making sure that you're not going to get hangry, that you feed yourself ahead of time, that you bring or contribute something that you would eat that fits into what you want, or you're prepared to order off the menu in that way as well. In today's crazy food environment, it's not that hard to get what you really need. It's not that hard to order something without the bun, without the sides. You may have to pay a little bit more if you're looking for, salmon sauteed in butter with a side of bacon and a pork chop, for instance. You can do that, but sometimes you have to plan ahead of time, and there's nothing wrong with making a phone call ahead of time. If you know you're meeting everybody at a restaurant, you can find out how they can best accommodate you. You can tell them you have some medical dietary needs and you want to make sure that you can get that comfortable, you can get that accommodated, and you want to do it in a way that's comfortable for yourself, for your dining partners, as well as the wait staff. So I'm Jackie Elmer. Make sure that you grab my guide at lowertoxiclife.com for more recipes and fun stuff. And make sure you are following my carnivore-ish playlist here on YouTube. If you have any thoughts, comments, suggestions, ideas, or ways that you've dealt with this issue, please drop them in the comments below. Give the channel a like, and I'll see you on the next video.